The contract offered $5 million. The warning beneath the signature line was worth far more. Harper Winslow read the final paragraph 3 times, then a fourth, then a fifth. The words never changed. Violation of any contractual terms will result in immediate termination of the agreement and financial penalties outlined herein. Her throat tightened. $5 million sat on one side of the equation. Disaster sat on the other. Neither felt entirely real. Across the massive mahogany desk sat Rafael Moretti, calm, silent, watching. Most people in Chicago recognized his name immediately. Some knew him from business magazines. Others knew him from whispered conversations that stopped whenever strangers entered the room. Power followed him everywhere. So did rumors. Neither seemed to bother him. The office itself felt intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Original artwork decorated the walls. Everything about the room projected control, success, authority. Harper had never felt more out of place in her life. She adjusted the sleeve of her thrift store cardigan. The movement was automatic, a nervous habit, one of many. The contract sat between them like a loaded weapon. $5 million for 1 year, one fake marriage, one carefully constructed lie. The amount of money alone could solve nearly every problem in her life. The overdue rent notices, the student loans, the medical debt left behind after her mother's illness, the second job she worked every weekend, the constant fear that one unexpected emergency could destroy everything. $5 million represented freedom. The kind of freedom Harper had stopped believing existed. Yet nothing about this situation felt safe, or normal, or wise. "Take your time." Raphael's voice interrupted her thoughts. Deep, controlled, the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Harper looked up. His expression revealed almost nothing. No impatience, no pressure, no visible emotion at all, which somehow made him even harder to read. Most powerful men enjoyed making people uncomfortable. Raphael simply observed it. "You understand the terms?" he asked. "I think so." The answer sounded weak even to her. His eyebrow lifted slightly. "You're uncertain. Most job offers don't involve pretending to be someone's wife." For the first time, a faint trace of amusement appeared in his eyes, gone almost immediately. The silence that followed stretched longer than expected. Harper looked back at the contract. Rule after rule. Public appearances, private confidentiality, separate bedrooms, no romantic expectations, no interference in business matters. Everything carefully outlined. Everything controlled. This wasn't a marriage. It was a business arrangement disguised as one, a transaction, nothing more. Yet her instincts continued warning her. People didn't offer strangers $5 million unless something complicated was happening behind the scenes. Something dangerous. Something she probably didn't understand. The realization made her stomach tighten. Finally, Harper placed the contract on the desk, then asked the question she had been holding back since arriving. "Why me?" The room fell silent. Outside, Chicago traffic moved far below. Inside, Raphael studied her carefully, long enough that she wondered if he intended to answer at all. Then he spoke, and what he said was the last answer she expected. "Because you're the only person who told me the truth." 3 days earlier, Rafael Moretti had interviewed 27 women. By the end of the process, he disliked all the 27. The first candidate spent 20 minutes discussing social media engagement statistics. The second wanted a private jet added to the agreement. The third asked whether the marriage could help launch a cosmetics brand. After that, the conversations only became worse. Models, influencers, socialites, reality television personalities. Every candidate looked perfect on paper, elegant, polished, photogenic. Exactly the type of woman people expected to stand beside a powerful man. Unfortunately, every conversation felt the same. Nobody cared about the arrangement itself. They cared about what they could gain from it. Money, exposure, status, access. The interviews became exhausting. By the afternoon of the third day, Raphael considered canceling the entire process. Then Harper Winslow arrived 20 minutes late. His advisors were already annoyed. The delay only made things worse. She entered the conference room, carrying a worn handbag and an expression that suggested she'd rather be almost anywhere else. Unlike the previous candidates, she wasn't dressed to impress. No designer labels, no expensive jewelry, no carefully rehearsed charm. Just a nervous woman trying very hard not to waste anyone's time. One advisor immediately checked his watch. Another sighed dramatically. Harper noticed. "Sorry, I'm late." She sat down, then added honestly, "The bus broke down." Several advisors exchanged unimpressed looks. Raphael didn't, because for the first time all week, somebody had offered an explanation that sounded real. The interview began awkwardly. Harper seemed uncomfortable, not intimidated, suspicious, as though she expected hidden cameras to appear at any moment. Eventually, one advisor slid the contract summary toward her. Most candidates reacted with excitement, or calculation. Harper reacted with confusion, then concern, then disbelief. She reread the first page, then looked directly at Raphael. "Can I ask something?" "Yes. Why would anyone agree to this?" The room became very quiet. One advisor nearly choked. Another stared at her as if she had committed a crime. Nobody questioned Raphael Moretti so directly, especially not during a job interview. Yet Harper continued. "It just seems strange. No fear, no manipulation, just honesty, raw and uncomplicated." The quality had become so rare in Raphael's world that it almost caught him off guard. "Strange?" he repeated. "A little." She shrugged apologetically. "I mean, you're rich." A few advisors looked horrified. Harper didn't seem to notice. "You're successful." Another pause. "You could probably marry anyone." The statement wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't complimentary. It was simply practical, which somehow made it more refreshing. Raphael found himself listening. Actually listening. For the first time all week, the interview lasted less than 30 minutes. When Harper finally left, the room erupted immediately. "Absolutely not! She's completely unsuitable. The press will destroy us. She's not remotely the right image." Every advisor had an opinion, most negative. Raphael listened quietly, then stood. The discussion ended instantly. "Prepare the contract." The room froze. One advisor blinked. "You can't be serious." Raphael picked up Harper's application file, then gave the answer nobody expected. "She's the only person who wasn't trying to sell me a version of herself. And for a man surrounded by performance every day, authenticity was worth far more than perfection." The wedding lasted 18 minutes. The headlines lasted weeks. By sunrise the following morning, photographs of Raphael Moretti and Harper Winslow were everywhere. News websites, business publications, entertainment blogs, social media feeds. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. Almost none of them were kind. Harper discovered this while sitting alone in the back seat of a luxury vehicle, scrolling through comments she immediately regretted reading. Some questioned her motives, others mocked her appearance. A few openly accused her of manipulating Raphael. The cruelest comments focused on her weight, as if a person's value could be measured by a number on a scale. Harper eventually locked her phone, then stared out the window. She told herself the comments didn't matter. The lie lasted approximately 10 seconds. Because words hurt, especially when you've spent your entire life hearing similar ones. Across from her, Raphael quietly noticed. He said nothing. The silence wasn't indifference, it was observation, a habit he developed years ago. Most people reacted emotionally. Raphael reacted strategically. The wedding itself had unfolded exactly as expected. Journalists crowded outside the venue. Photographers shouted questions. Reporters speculated endlessly. No one understood why one of the most powerful men in Chicago had married a woman nobody recognized. That confusion only fueled the fascination. Unfortunately, public attention wasn't the biggest problem. Family was. The moment Harper entered Moretti Manor, she felt it. The judgment, the curiosity, the hostility. Several relatives made little effort to hide their opinions, especially Aunt Celeste, a woman whose smile somehow felt more dangerous than open criticism. "How lovely to finally meet you." The greeting sounded polite. The tone didn't. Celeste's eyes briefly scanned Harper from head to toe. Evaluating, dismissing, judging. Harper recognized the look immediately. She had seen versions of it her entire life. The difference was that most people at least pretended better. The next few weeks followed a predictable pattern. Subtle insults, backhanded compliments, social events designed to embarrass her, attempts to expose weaknesses. Every interaction felt like a test she never agreed to take. What frustrated the family most was Harper's response. She refused to fight, refused to retaliate, refused to become the villain they wanted. When employees spoke to her, she listened. When staff members needed help, she helped. She learned names, remembered birthdays, asked about families, simple things, ordinary things. Yet inside Moretti Manor, those actions stood out. Because many wealthy people noticed service, few noticed servants. Gradually, something unexpected happened. Housekeepers began smiling when Harper entered a room. Kitchen staff saved her favorite desserts. Drivers greeted her warmly. Even security personnel seemed more relaxed around her. The shift wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. And some members of the family hated it. Popularity created influence. Influence created threats. One evening, while leaving a family dinner, Celeste stepped into a quiet hallway and made a private phone call. Her voice remained low, careful, calculated. "Find out everything about her." A pause, then another. "I don't care how long it takes." Her expression hardened. Everyone has something to hide. Unaware of the conversation, Harper continued walking toward her room, never realizing that someone had just started digging into her past. The attacks began quietly, which made them more dangerous. Open hostility could be confronted. Hidden hostility was harder to fight, especially when it wore expensive clothes and smiled during family photographs. The first incident happened at a charity luncheon. Harper arrived wearing a simple navy blue dress she had spent nearly an hour convincing herself looked appropriate. The moment she entered the ballroom, she realized someone had intentionally given her the wrong dress code information. Every other woman wore formal evening attire, designer gowns, luxury jewelry, high-fashion elegance. Harper looked painfully underdressed. Several relatives noticed immediately, Aunt Celeste most of all. The satisfaction in her eyes lasted only a moment, but Harper saw it. So did Raphael. For a brief second, humiliation tightened around Harper's chest. The familiar feeling returned, the one she remembered from school, from job interviews, from rooms where people decided she didn't belong before she even spoke. Then she straightened her shoulders, smiled politely, and walked inside anyway. By the end of the event, she had somehow become the most popular person in the room, not because of appearance, because she listened. While others competed for attention, Harper focused on conversations. People remembered how she made them feel. That mattered more than any dress. The second attack came through the media. An anonymous source leaked stories questioning her background. Articles appeared online within days. Most contained half-truths, carefully manipulated facts. details designed to make her look opportunistic. A woman chasing wealth, a woman chasing status, a woman chasing Raphael. Harper pretended the stories didn't bother her. Raphael knew better. One evening he found her sitting alone in the estate library, reading the same page repeatedly, not turning it, not absorbing it, simply staring. The articles sat nearby, evidence enough. Without a word, Raphael picked them up, then dropped them into the fireplace. The papers curled immediately. Flames consumed them. Harper looked up, confused. "You didn't have to do that." "No." His gaze remained fixed on the fire. "I wanted to." The answer lingered longer than expected. Protection didn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrived quietly, like someone removing a burden without announcing it. For the first time, Harper saw something different beneath Raphael's reputation. Not the businessman, not the feared public figure. The man, and that realization unsettled her more than the attacks ever had, because understanding people made them harder to keep at a distance. Weeks later, another incident occurred, this time inside Moretti Manor itself. Harper accidentally entered a private office while searching for archived charity records. The room appeared abandoned. Dust covered most surfaces. Unused furniture lined the walls. Yet one drawer stood partially open. Curiosity drew her closer. Inside sat a collection of old documents. Most seemed ordinary: financial reports, correspondence, estate records. Then she noticed a familiar name: Raphael's father. Several folders contained references to his death, a death officially ruled accidental years earlier. Something about the documents felt wrong, incomplete, hidden. The deeper she looked, the stranger the files became. And suddenly Harper understood something unsettling. The marriage wasn't the only secret inside the Moretti family. Someone had buried something much bigger. Harper couldn't stop thinking about the files. For 3 days, the questions followed her everywhere. Through breakfast meetings, through charity events, through long evenings inside Moretti Manor. Something about the documents felt unfinished. Pieces were missing. Dates didn't align. Reports contradicted one another. The deeper she thought about it, the more convinced she became that Raphael's father's death had never been fully explained. Eventually, curiosity won. One rainy evening, she carried the files into the estate library and began reading them again. Hours passed. Most of the documents seemed harmless: old financial statements, business correspondence, legal records. Then she found the will, not Raphael's grandfather's final will, an earlier draft, one that had never been filed publicly. The discovery immediately caught her attention. Harper carefully turned each page. The language appeared similar to the version everyone knew, until she reached a handwritten note attached to the final section. The note wasn't addressed to lawyers or business advisors. It was addressed directly to Raphael. The message was brief, simple, and deeply unsettling. The marriage requirement is not about inheritance. It is about protection. Harper reread the sentence twice, then a third time. Protection from what? The answer began appearing as she reviewed additional records. Years before his death, Raphael's father had been conducting a private investigation. Financial irregularities, missing funds, secret partnerships, powerful individuals hiding illegal transactions behind legitimate businesses. The deeper he dug, the more dangerous the discoveries became. Then he died. Officially, it was ruled an accident. Unofficially, the documents suggested something very different. The investigation stopped immediately afterward. Evidence vanished. Witnesses disappeared. Questions remained unanswered. And somehow Raphael inherited both the empire and the danger. The marriage clause suddenly made sense. A spouse created stability, visibility, Protection. Someone anticipated future threats. Someone believed Raphael might eventually need an ally he could trust. The realization sent a chill through Harper, because if the conspiracy still existed, she wasn't standing beside Raphael anymore. She was standing inside the target zone. Later that evening, she showed the documents to him. For several minutes, Raphael said nothing. His expression remained unreadable, but she noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his hands tightened slightly around the papers. "You knew?" Harper asked softly. Raphael stared at the handwritten note. "No." The answer surprised her. He looked genuinely shaken, not by the conspiracy, by the fact that his grandfather had hidden this from him. All these years, the silence stretched between them. Neither knew what to say. Finally, Raphael folded the papers carefully. "We need to be careful." The statement sounded simple. It wasn't, because both of them understood what it meant. Someone had killed before. Someone might kill again. And now they were getting closer to the truth. Hours later, Harper returned to her room. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, then froze. Every drawer had been opened. Clothes covered the floor. Personal belongings had been scattered everywhere. Someone had searched the room, and judging by the broken lock on her desk, they had been looking for something very specific. For several seconds, Harper simply stood in the doorway, unable to move, unable to think. Her room looked as though a storm had torn through it. Drawers emptied, books scattered, clothes thrown across furniture. Nothing valuable appeared missing, which somehow made the situation worse. Because theft wasn't the goal. Someone had been searching for information, searching for evidence, searching for answers. The realization sent a chill through her. By the time Raphael arrived, security teams were already examining the room. Every employee who had access to the floor was being questioned. Every security recording was under review. Yet Harper barely heard any of it, because one thought repeated endlessly inside her mind. Someone wanted whatever she and Raphael had discovered, and they were willing to break into a private room to find it. Raphael studied the damage quietly. His expression remained controlled. Too controlled. The dangerous kind. The kind people displayed when anger became focused. After several minutes, he turned toward the security chief. "Double the protection." The order came instantly. No exceptions. Harper opened her mouth, then closed it. Normally, she would have objected. The extra security, the constant supervision, the feeling of being watched. Tonight felt different. Tonight she was frightened, and Raphael noticed. The realization softened something in his expression, only slightly. But enough. Later that evening, neither could sleep. The mansion felt restless, tense, like a place holding its breath. Harper eventually wandered into the kitchen searching for tea. Instead, she found Raphael sitting alone at the long dining table. A single lamp illuminated the room. The rest remained dark. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Raphael gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Couldn't sleep?" Harper laughed softly. "Not after finding my room destroyed." A faint smile touched his face. Brief, gone almost immediately. She sat down. The conversation started small, harmless, then gradually became something else. Stories about childhood, favorite books, embarrassing memories, pieces of themselves they rarely shared. Hours passed unnoticed. For the first time since signing the contract, neither felt like participants in an arrangement. They felt like two people. Just people. The simplicity of it was surprisingly dangerous, because emotional distance had always been part of the agreement. Distance protected everyone. Distance prevented complications. Yet somewhere between midnight and sunrise, that distance began disappearing. Not dramatically, quietly, the way walls erode over time. Eventually, Harper looked at him. "You don't trust many people." The statement wasn't a question. Raphael considered denying it. "Didn't." "No." Harper nodded, as if trust is something people earn. His gaze settled on hers. "Isn't it?" The answer should have ended the conversation. Instead, silence followed. Comfortable silence. The kind that existed when words became unnecessary. And for the first time in years, Raphael realized something unsettling. The thought arrived without warning, without permission, without logic. If anything happened to Harper, it would destroy him. The realization struck harder than any threat, because fear for himself was familiar. Fear for someone else wasn't. And suddenly the contract felt far more dangerous than any conspiracy. The breakthrough arrived on a Tuesday morning. Appropriately enough, it came from Harper. Not investigators, not attorneys, not the private security experts Raphael paid enormous amounts of money to employ. Harper, the woman who wasn't supposed to be involved in any of this. For nearly 2 weeks, she had reviewed copies of old financial records recovered from the estate archives. Most appeared ordinary, boring even. Numbers, transfers, corporate filings, nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, at least not at first glance. Then she noticed something unusual. A series of payments, repeated every 6 months. Always the same amount, always routed through different companies, always ending in accounts connected to members of the Moretti family. The pattern shouldn't have existed, yet there it was, hidden beneath years of paperwork, invisible to anyone not looking carefully. When Harper showed the records to Raphael, the investigation accelerated immediately. Analysts reviewed the transactions. Forensic accountants traced the money. The results shocked everyone. The payments formed a network, a secret one, designed to move millions of dollars without attracting attention. The trail eventually connected to companies involved in Raphael's father's investigation, shortly before his death. Suddenly, everything started making sense. The missing evidence, the financial irregularities, the mysterious warnings. Someone had spent years protecting a conspiracy, and the people responsible weren't strangers. They were family. The realization hit Raphael harder than he expected, because betrayal from enemies was predictable. Betrayal from relatives felt different, personal, painful. Days later, the investigation uncovered the final piece, a collection of encrypted correspondence hidden inside one of the shell corporations. Messages, instructions, financial agreements, evidence strong enough to destroy reputations permanently. The names inside the files left the room silent. Cousin Vincent, Aunt Celeste, 2 senior executives, several trusted advisors. People Raphael had known his entire life. People who attended family holidays. People who stood beside him at important milestones. All connected, all involved. The room felt colder after that. Harper watched Raphael carefully. The anger wasn't what worried her. The disappointment was. Because no amount of preparation could soften a betrayal like this. The following 48 hours became chaos. Lawyers, investigators, emergency meetings. The Moretti Empire felt like it was tearing itself apart from the inside. Then came the retaliation. Because desperate people rarely surrender quietly. Late one evening, Harper left a meeting inside a downtown office building. Security should have been nearby. It wasn't. The hallway appeared empty. Too empty. She reached the elevator, pressed the button, waited. Then a cloth covered her mouth from behind. The attack happened instantly. 1 second normal, the next darkness. By the time security realized she was missing, the vehicle carrying her was already gone. Hours later, Raphael received the call. No demands, no negotiation. Only a message. Simple, direct, terrifying. Stop looking for the truth if you ever want to see her again. For the first time since this began, Raphael wasn't thinking about the conspiracy, or the empire, or the evidence. He was thinking about Harper, and the fact that someone had just made the biggest mistake of their life. Raphael Moretti had spent most of his life solving problems. Money solved many. Influence solved others. Power handled the rest. This situation was different, because Harper wasn't a problem. She was a person, and for the first time in years, the thought of losing someone terrified him. The message sat on his desk, short, cruel, effective. Stop looking for the truth if you ever want to see her again. For several minutes, nobody spoke. His advisors waited. Security teams waited. Everyone understood the danger. Finally, Raphael stood. The movement alone changed the atmosphere in the room. What do we know? The question triggered immediate responses. Vehicle sightings, phone records, financial activity, possible locations. The information flooded in. Normally, Raphael would have approached the situation strategically, carefully, patiently. Not today. Today, every second mattered, because somewhere Harper was alone and afraid. The realization fueled something dangerous inside him. Meanwhile, Harper sat inside an abandoned lakefront property, nearly 2 hours outside the city. Her hands weren't tied. The doors weren't locked, technically, because armed guards watched every exit. Escape was impossible. The kidnapping wasn't about ransom. It was about leverage. The people behind the conspiracy wanted Raphael to stop investigating, wanted him distracted, wanted him desperate. Unfortunately for them, desperation often made people reckless. By dawn, Raphael's investigators located the property. A mistake by one of the kidnappers led them directly to it. The operation moved quickly, quietly. No press, no negotiations, no warnings. The confrontation lasted less than 10 minutes, because the people responsible made one fatal error. They assumed Raphael valued the empire more than the woman. They were wrong. For years, he had protected businesses, assets, reputations. Today, he protected Harper. Everything else came second. When security teams finally entered the building, Harper barely had time to process what was happening. Voices echoed through the hallways. Footsteps thundered across wooden floors. Then a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Raphael. Relief hit her so suddenly it hurt. Neither spoke at first. They didn't need to. Some emotions existed beyond language. The remaining conspirators were arrested before sunset. Evidence recovered, accounts seized, witnesses secured. The conspiracy that began years earlier finally collapsed. Not because powerful people suddenly developed consciences, because the truth survived long enough to expose them. Weeks later, the final trials concluded. Convictions followed. The danger was over. The empire remained intact. The investigation ended, and then reality arrived. 1 year. The contract had lasted exactly 1 year. Its expiration date sat waiting on the calendar. Tomorrow. Harper stared at the document late that evening. The agreement was complete, the job finished, the arrangement fulfilled. By every legal definition, she was free. Yet the thought of leaving felt strangely painful. Across the mansion, Raphael sat alone in his office, staring at the same date. Because after everything they survived together, the contract was ending, and for the first time in his life, he faced a problem money couldn't solve. The contract expired at midnight. By sunrise, Harper Winslow had packed her suitcase. The process took less time than she expected. A few clothes, several books, photographs, small reminders of a life that suddenly felt very far away. The room looked strangely empty afterward, almost unfamiliar. For a year, Moretti Manor had been her home. Not because it was luxurious, not because it was beautiful, because somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling temporary. That realization made leaving harder than she expected. Outside her window, the estate grounds stretched toward the horizon. Employees moved through their morning routines. Gardeners trimmed hedges. Drivers prepared vehicles. Kitchen staff started breakfast. Life continued, as if nothing important was happening. Yet for Harper, everything felt different. The agreement was complete. The danger was gone. The conspiracy had collapsed. There was no reason to stay. At least, that was what she kept telling herself. Late that afternoon, she carried her suitcase downstairs. The main entrance stood ahead. Freedom, closure, the end of the story. Except Raphael was waiting there, alone. No advisors, no lawyers, no security team. Just Raphael. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument, because both knew what this moment meant. Harper adjusted her grip on the suitcase handle. "I guess this is goodbye." The words sounded smaller than she intended. Raphael looked at the suitcase, then at her. Something about his expression seemed unfamiliar, not because it lacked confidence, because it lacked protection. For the first time since they met, he looked vulnerable, and vulnerability suited him far less than power. "I have something for you." His voice remained calm, but she noticed the tension beneath it. Raphael reached into his jacket and produced a single folded document. Harper almost laughed. After everything they had survived, of course it would end with paperwork. The thought disappeared when she accepted it. The pages felt different immediately. No legal language, no payment terms, no conditions, no penalties, no obligations. Nothing resembling the contract that started all of this. Instead, it was a letter. A simple letter. Written entirely in Raphael's own handwriting. Harper read it slowly. Every word, every sentence, every confession. He wrote about trust, about loneliness, about the strange way she changed the atmosphere around him. He wrote about employees smiling more, about family dinners becoming easier to survive, about discovering that loyalty couldn't be purchased, only earned. Most importantly, he wrote the truth. The truth he spent months avoiding. The fake marriage stopped feeling fake a long time ago. By the time Harper reached the final page, her vision had blurred. One question waited at the bottom. Just one. No pressure, no contract, no payment, no expectations. Would you stay? Not as my fake wife, as my real one. The silence that followed felt endless. Raphael said nothing, waited, patiently. The way people wait when the answer matters more than anything else. Finally, Harper looked up. A smile appeared, small, emotional, real. And in that moment, both understood something simple. The contract that brought them together lasted 1 year. The choice that kept them together lasted forever.